What's up, fight fans? It's Monday, July 17th, 2017. This is the Monday Morning Analyst. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Luke Thomas. I'm the host of this program. Not a minute to waste. 3 parts to the podcast. We review what happened in the weekend's action sort of briefly in the first segment, take a look with some visual aids in the second segment with something in particular, and then take a look at what's coming up ahead in the third segment. 2 events really of note over the weekend, Bellator 181 and the UFC Fight Night, Ponzinibbio versus Nelson. I'll give a brief mention to Invicta, which happened on Saturday. Not a whole lot to mention about that one, but nevertheless, let's get to it without wasting another minute. We'll begin and work backwards, sort of starting from yesterday. UFC Fight Night 113 or UFC Fight Night Nelson versus Ponzinibbio. This took place at the SSE Hydro in Glasgow, Scotland, for an attendance of 10,589 and a total gate of apparently $1.2 million. In the main event, Santiago Ponzinibbio defeating Gunnar Nelson at 122 of the first round, marred by controversy related to a potential eye poke that was neither called nor flagged. The guys at Reddit sort of found the picture of it. It is real. I mean, how bad was it? You can believe Gunnar Nelson or you cannot believe him. Really up to you. I'm sure it obviously had some impact. But for me, the big takeaway from this one was, you know, I've been down on a lot of these tough Brazil or tough Latin America guys, and Ponzinibbio has gotten a lot better. Now, maybe he wouldn't win in a rematch. He was getting lit up a little bit. Gunnar Nelson was finding him, nearly blasted him out with an uppercut, and certainly with a couple left hands, got him real good. But the big takeaway for me was that Ponzinibbio did something really, really smart. Double jab, step off at an angle, and then he fired the cross. In this particular case, it was a right hand. Really, really good stuff from him. Very, very impressed by that. So a lot of guys will double jab and stay in the same lane and then fire and they get caught. He doubled it up, shifted, and then fired the cross, and it was really, really nice adaptive stuff. And this is the kind of win, by the way, that puts him in the top 10 of the division, so can't hate on him too much. Cynthia Calvillo defeating Joanne Calderwood, 230-27, 129-28. I think I had it 29-28. I think I gave Calderwood maybe the last round. I have to go back and look. I know some folks were upset with the scoring. You know, we've been over my opinions on scoring a million times. I don't really find it a very effective way to adjudicate who won a fight, but neither here nor there. Now, I put in the headline, to me, she's like the next Ronda Rousey. Now, let me explain what that means, or kind of the next Ronda Rousey. I am not suggesting she is going to take over women's MMA in the same way Rousey did, or be some kind of popular attraction, or have the same game, or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is as follows, which is why I wrote kinda. She kinda is, because her striking, you know, is okay. I thought maybe she outstruck Calderwood here, but clearly needs work at a bare minimum. You'll see the wrestling here is good, but needs some work, right? But on the mats, she's effortless. On the mats, she is absolutely effortless. She is so good. Her transitions are so quick. She knows in a lot of stall positions, she doesn't stall because she's got a lot of other offensive weapons. There's just a certain degree of refinement for her MMA jiu-jitsu that makes it so absolutely lethal. And tactically, she's got a lot of good tools, and strategically, she puts them into the right moments where she doesn't play around with you. She doesn't waste a lot of time. She's quick. And I really have been, I was watching her first round armbar transition yesterday, and I thought to myself, this reminds me of what Rousey used to do to people. Really, really impressive by her. I think on the mats, there hasn't been a grappler in the women's MMA as exciting as Rousey, except from Cynthia Calvillo. She has kind of taken over in that sense, and so I've been very, very impressed by her. We'll take a look at some of that more in particular in the second segment. Paul Felder smashing Stevie Ray at 351 of the first round. You know, they were kind of tied up in the clinch, and if you notice, they were head-to-head a lot of the times. There was no real room up the middle. There's a lot of elbow, there's a lot of knees people think just come up the middle. There are some that come up to the side, and then they get smashed laterally. You could have done those, right? Sort of like an inside of the knee to the outside of the rib. You could have done that, but he didn't. But what happened was they were like real tight. You saw Felder stay in place, and you saw Stevie retract. And when he did that, it opened up a lane of space in between, and he fired up a knee and caught him. And those elbows, man, you want to talk about driving an elbow through a target. My goodness. Whoa. Vicious, vicious stuff. Really just driving all the way through that thing. Very, very impressed by that, to put it mildly. Stevie Ray's a very talented guy. And for Paul Felder to be able to do that to him, where he is just drilling him with super heavy elbows in a very calm and technical manner. And Stevie Ray's got a good guard, too. That's an impressive win, to put it mildly. Jack Marshman defeats Ryan James. 29-28 across the board. Not a whole lot to say about that one. Khalil Roundtree defeating Paul Craig at 4:56 of the first round. You know, I don't like knocking a guy out and standing over him in his own country. Not my favorite thing in the world, but You know, it's prize fighting. I guess it's a part of the game. But in any case, if you like that or you didn't like that, you got to be impressed with what he did. Driving Paul Craig back. Paul Craig not really, you know, mixing up his offense a lot, kind of chipping away at the legs with leg kicks. But he really couldn't really commit to any of them. He was kind of doing it and then trying to get out of the way as fast as possible. And the real big takeaway here was the lack of head movement. You saw Roundtree finding the right angle and then firing across a lot and having some success because Craig's head wasn't really moving a whole lot, especially as he was in pursuit backwards or laterally. And eventually it was an uppercut that caused him, but it was still something up the middle, right? That's really what the problem was. The head wasn't getting off of the center line as it needed to, and Khalil Roundtree, you know, cracked him. You know, Roundtree's had some tough bouts. I think a lot of folks wrote him off. I mean, this to me reminded me of like RFA Roundtree when he was just lighting people on fire, and here he was. He came back with a nice win. You know, see where he can go from here, but yeah, he needed this one. Justin Willis defeating James Mulheron, or Mulhorn, however you want to pronounce it, 30-27 across the board. Terrible fight. There's a lot of these guys in MMA who kind of have this like sort of like doughy body, and they've got good, quick hands, like a Paul Buentello type. But these guys were both the same kind of thing, at least on the feet. It's just that Willis was the better version of the two, so there wasn't a tremendous distance between them skill-wise. It was just that it was just enough of one that Mulhorn or Mulheron couldn't make up to it, and then also Willis had some skills on the ground as well. I'm not saying they weren't good athletes. I'm not trying to like, you know, say, oh, because you don't look like, you know, Bohashinia that you're not a good fighter. It's not what I'm saying. I am just saying you see this kind of archetype a little bit in MMA, especially among the heavier fighters at heavyweight, and you saw it here. It's just that there was just enough of a distance that one fighter couldn't make up the difference, but one couldn't really take off and leave the other one in the dust either. So he got stuck with a pretty bad fight. Okay, we keep going here. Danny Roberts knocking out Bobby Nash in the second round at 3:59. A solid win for him. Alexandre Pantoja defeating Neil Seery at 2:31 of the third round. I would give the edge on the feet in space to Neil Seery, although both of them were landing good shots. But really good body work in the clinch by Pantoja, taking him down that third round, and once he did, it was borderline academic. I mean, it was just a massive disparity of talent on the ground. And Neil Seery's, you know, pioneer in Irish MMA, and I wish him the best of luck on his future, and I thank him for all the fights he gave us. He did a great job, especially, you know, given the opportunities that he had. How about Galore Bofondo defeating Charlie Ward? My God, 2:10 of the first round. It's the same throw that Yoel Romero tried to hit on Robert Whittaker, except in this case, Bofondo has sick balance, and then on top of that, just physically roughhoused him over. And the guy landed face first. I mean, that's a terrible way to go. And then, you know, Bofondo followed up there, referee having to stop it. You know, Bofondo, I think, might have some. I'm not convinced exactly about his upside. And I'm not saying he doesn't have one. I'm just saying I need to see more. But his physicality is quite impressive, to put it mildly. Danny Henry and Daniel Tamer, 29-28 on two scorecards for Henry, and then 29-26 on the other. So he wins. Brett Johns defeating Albert Morales, 230-27s, 130-25. And then Leslie Smith getting a nice win against Amanda Lemos at 2:53 the second round. Bit of a slow start, but she came back to life. Lemos looked like she was dragging there physically, totally winded, gets her against the cage and just hammers her with elbows until the referee came and stopped it. Your fight of the night, Danny Henry versus Daniel Tamer. I would have given it to the co-main event, but performance of the night, Santiago Ponzinibbio and Paul Felder. My fighter of the card is going to be Cynthia Calvillo, which we'll look at in the second segment. Real quickly, Bellator 181. Not a whole lot to say about this one. This took place at the WinStar World Casino in Thackerville, Oklahoma. And by the way, there's not another Bellator until late August. Derek Campos defeating Brandon Girtz. Doctor stoppage of the second round. I actually thought Brandon Girtz was winning this, even though he was getting backed up. I thought he was doing the better damage, but he took a big knee that opened up just an absolutely vicious cut right over the center of his forehead. Eventually, they had to call it. It was a horrible, horrible cut. I felt bad for Brandon Girtz because I thought he was doing pretty well. Campos was the one charging forward, but I don't know. It was pretty even on the feet, and maybe even Girtz was getting the better of it, but nevertheless, he was faster anyway. But nevertheless, a great fight between those two. They put on YouTube. You can check that out as well. John Salter, man, incredible win over Kendall Grove, submitting him in the first round, putting him to sleep, as a matter of fact. You know, I think Grove's stance is a little wide, but they were exchanging more or less evenly on the feet. But once they got the takedown and took him to the mat, it was quick. and put him to sleep. Emily Ducati, who in my judgment still remains one of the best prospects in all of women's MMA, defeating Jessica Middleton at 29-27 and 2 29-28. Was essentially able to out-wrestle her. Early on, Middleton had a couple of reversals that were nice, but over time, just the physicality of the skills and the wrestling skills, Ducati takedown, passed, went to mount several times, and Middleton just stopped having answers for her. And then Joe Warren did what Joe Warren always does, defeating Steve Garcia 30-27 across the board. A couple of notes from the prelim card there. Rafael Lovato Jr., one of the very few Americans who's ever, I think only the second American to ever win the world championships in jiu-jitsu at black belt, defeating Mike Biggie Rhodes, UFC vet, at just 159 of the first round, man. Actually pulling half guard, rolling to his back, rolling on top, using that to set the angle, and then, like a knee tap takedown, runs him over, and then gets the back, had, I think, a palm-to-palm choke on him. Vicious, vicious, vicious stuff. If you haven't seen that, please go check that out. Really good job by Rafael Lovato Jr., whose game, even though he's a little bit older and long in the tooth, appears to be adapting to MMA quite nicely. Also on that card as well, Logan Storley winning. Logan Storley was one of these wrestling standouts, multiple time, All-American, national champion, the whole bit. He wins at 144 of the first round, hammering this kid, forgive my pronunciation, Camille Haley, just crushing him. And I thought it was actually a bit of an early stoppage. And then when the ref pulled him off, Haley didn't object to it at all. He just was getting thunderclapped with those. Also on that as well, Justin Lawrence, when Ultimate Fighter, got a win over Tristan Thomason at 3:34 of the very first round. Okay, Bruno Vargas lost against Katie Collins. Funny. Interesting. I did not see that coming as well. And there was an Invicta as well where Jin Yu Frey got a nice win over Smashley Cummins. I believe. I have to go back and let me double check that real quickly. I don't really. I mean, it wasn't a whole lot of coverage for Invicta this past weekend. To be honest, I don't even know if I mentioned it in the last version of this podcast. It was not a very good card. It didn't get a lot of run, but very, very quickly, I believe. Just want to make sure that I got that right. Yes, of course. Jin Yu Frey, who I met at UFC 211 in Dallas. A physical specimen she is. Also on that card, Suna Davis-daughter got a nice win, a decision win over Kelly D'Angelo. You can check that out, of course, on UFC Fight Pass. And that, as always, took place at the Scottish Rite Temple in Kansas City, Missouri. Okay, let's do this. Let's go to the second segment. And I want to explain to you I've already told you my case for it with words, but let's take a look at some of the slides about why I think Cynthia Calvillo on the mats, is the most exciting female grappler since Ronda Rousey. Like many of you, I've become very impressed with Cynthia Calvillo in a very short time. And, I explained already what I mean with the Ronda Rousey comparisons. They're not one-to-one. They're not direct. They're not exactly, I'm not saying she's the next superstar in women's MMA and that she has the exact same style and that she's going to pick up where Rousey left off. None of that stuff. But here's what I am saying, and these slides I hope will speak to that. On the mats, she is obviously a very naturally talented grappler, number one. Number two, she doesn't really mess around with a lot of portions of grappling that don't need to be there, right? She's not trying to lay you flat and then work from side control and then go knee on belly. She's looking for your back at all times. She'll even let you roll to an extent so she can get it. And from there, she's quite nasty. Plus, she has excellent, excellent transitions. She's just a complete, naturally talented grappler at home in these situations. So we're going to look at the end of the first and the end of the third. We've already talked about the scoring. I'm not going to get into that either, but I've been so impressed by what Calvillo can do on the ground. She really is something kind of special here. So let's go through these slides here very quickly, and you'll just see what I'm talking about. At least I hope you will. I'll try to explain the best I can. Here you see her with she's at a orthodox stance, right? And I can't tell if she bites on what Cynthia is doing and raises the knee, or was looking for some other kind of switch. I'm not exactly sure, but she raises the knee here in reading Cynthia coming in. But she doesn't really drive it through. Like, she doesn't drive it up. She just kind of raises it, which indicates to me she was either looking for a fake or, decided to pull it back at the last minute, and it just didn't work. In any case, Cynthia gets a hold of it and is going to run her around, right? Here she is. This is the foot. This is the right foot right here of Cynthia Calvillo. So she's going to try and run her either this direction or straight back, depending on what her other hands are doing. She's going to block off one of the hips here. right? And she sort of turns back here. You can see this is a bit of a whizzer here, but it's not really far enough to be an effective whizzer. She just kind of got her hand back there. It's too low. You'd want to have these more connected for this to work appropriately. So what she's going to do now, she's just going to run her in a direction where she has to brace, like that, right? Sort of almost like behind her, like this way and then this way at the same time, kind of like a swooping and counterclockwise motion. So there she is. She has to hand plant. All right, so let's watch what happens here. And like, just sort of take note here what's on the clock and how fast Calvillo can progress to these really advanced, dangerous positions. All right, so here we are. So now they both switch. This is a really bad move by Calderwood. I don't know what she was thinking here. She's wrapping the head thinking she's going to throw her over, but once you're on your knees, it's not really going to work, especially if your other hand is posted. You would need to this other hand to not be posted and to be able to roll through. And even then, I don't know how that would work because you don't have really enough space between here and the mat for that to work. You'd have to have a really, tight turn. You need, you can do drop seos, for example, over the shoulder, but that's when you have a full arm already over, not merely just the head. They don't have their feet planted right. A drop seo is partly just a timing issue. I don't know. People make jokes all the time about why women's MMA fighters keep trying to go for these head tosses, and I don't really know what the answer is. I don't really know to what degree the criticism is fair, but it's certainly fair in this particular context. And you see Calvillo doesn't even really care about it at all, nor should she. There's nothing here. I don't know why she did it. So this looks bad, but you can see this is as far as she can turn her. She would have to be on her feet and then driving her torso over for that to work. But she just kind of turns and stops. So there's nothing there on this. And I think the other hand, if Calvillo really wanted to, she could just release the right hand and post it, and she'd be fine. It wouldn't go over unless unless Calder would again immediately got. She's not even on her toes, much less her feet at all. She's on like the insteps are touching the ground. She'd have to be up on her feet, driving over at the exact same time, and that's really, really hard to do once you're on your knees. Like, it's easy when you're drilling. If we're going to do drop seos today, I'm going to start from my knees and work your way up to standing or something. But when it's expected. But if you're already on your knees and someone knows you're on your knees, they're not really going to be too worried about getting thrown. There's a little bit here where she's kind of almost ass over tea kettle here, but you can just see this was not executed all that well. So then she pops her head out, right? And now she's going to float on top of her hips, putting her weight on top of her, by the way. Automatically going forward like a seatbelt grip and around the neck. All right, boom. As soon as she sits up, that first hook comes right in. Immediately. Look at this. I think we're in 6 seconds in, 7 seconds in. She's already got a hook in there, right? And which way she's going to fall. Let's see. Let's watch this. To the side of the hook. She's going to snatch her off of her base. All right, BJ Penn style. BJ Penn was the king of snatching you off of your base because it's a lot harder for you to do a whole lot. When you're on your base, you've got some options. When you're off, you've got a lot less options. So she snatches her off, right? And here they are hand fighting. Now, she's got only one hook. This one's around the hips. You might ask, how secure is this? It depends on the person who's doing it. You do feel a little bit of something here around the outside of their hip bone. It does give you a little bit of grip. It's not great. Certainly not nearly as good as having two hooks. It really just depends on the person, what attack they're going for, what kind of skills they have in this particular position. But in any case, you can see she's already advancing. All right. Now, Calderwood gets to an elbow here and tries to sit up. This is bad because now Calvillo can wrap the throat. She's got one hand here. She can just draw this back. There's not really a whole lot of elbow to rib pinching to keep this in here. But that's the thing what Calvillo wants. First, she just wants to secure the position. Look at that, right? Go back. What do you see here? No hook. But because she's sitting up, elbow to hip. Look back here. There's no space to get a hook once she comes here. Can't really kind of get it in. Elbow close to the hip, close to the top of the thigh, right? Hard to get that hook in there. But if someone tries to put their weight down, now her hips are, the outside of her leg are touching. She gets to an elbow. This hook, this sort of underhook here, this backwards underhook from Calvillo is keeping her arm away from her thigh. And when she sits up, now she's threatening the throat. Calderwood's not even paying attention anymore. There goes the second hook and brings her right back down too. You notice that, right? Now she's back on her throat. This is like, You know, I mean, this is child's play a little bit. It's just the speed of this is really, really impressive. Now, Calderwood tries something kind of interesting here, which I commend her for. All right, look at that. She's going to try and sit. She's going to grab the outside of this leg. She wants to drive her elbow across, because if you're going to turn into someone, this elbow, one, will help to keep them pinned, and two, you've got to get it across so you can get your shoulders turned. The one mistake I think she makes here is, this is really good timing, by the way. You know, use this to sit up, hold them down, right? If you're keeping this leg and their elbows down, it's going to keep it a little bit harder for Calvillo to sit up and grab and pull you back down. So she gets that part right, but the thing I would have done a little bit first is, I would have tried to roll in, like flatten them out on their back, and then sink your hips down as low as you can and then turn. There's obviously, this whole thing is a timing and speed issue. You've got to explode into that spot, right? And so when you sink down like that and you turn, you risk giving up mount, you risk getting armbarred, you risk a lot of things. And maybe she wanted to do it this way so she could keep her turned. But if you lower your hips down like that, it's a lot easier to turn. It's a lot easier. Your legs are, and your hips are much less controlled. It's just a lot easier to get to your base that way. If this is a speed issue and that promotes speed, you know, if you're going to take those risks, I think it's personally in her interest. But to her credit, she actually gets on top. Now she has to work for it a little bit, but she gets on top. But here's Calvillo already framing up. Right? Not missing a beat, because the turn was a little bit slow. It's good. It's not great. And so in that difference, Calvillo can begin to set up. She grabs the right arm of Calderwood, and she did it in the turn. She grabs it even before she gets to this space. It's kind of locked here. You see that? Calvillo knows it's coming. She knows she's going to go that way, so she locks it up here. Right? And she gets to her base. Now, Calvillo frames for the armbar. And you see Calderwood try to prevent it by ducking and sort of like, not merely turtling up, but like almost shrinking her body a little bit to prevent that space. But that's not going to work. If you're looking at this position, what does Calvillo need to get to where she wants to go? She has to rotate this way. Her hips need to come out this way, right? Because she needs to get this back of her leg across the face. So she has to turn and come up underneath. That's what's missing here. And that's exactly what she does. Go back and look at this real quick. Look at where she is. There's no armbar here. But there's enough of a space where you can turn your head inside, bring your hips out, and that will naturally not really turn you this way, but turn you inside. Like that. That is what you want. This is correct. She's got that arm locked up the whole time. If I'm Calderwood and I know this person wants to go this way, I'm going to cover the hips to prevent that. I'm not going to stay in place. Watch, she just stays in place. Not a good call. Not a good call by that. So if you know they're trying to frame for the armbar, follow it and beat it. Get to the spot where you know their hips need to be. And if you can do that, you need that angle change. Look, one person's going this way, one person's going this way. If you take away that angle, where's the armbar? It doesn't exist. So they have to set up the angle to get it. Take it away, there is no armbar. But Calvillo's quick, man. She's like playing speed chess out here, and these ladies are having a hard time following. So then this is all sort of fairly good and conventional, but okay. One thing about this position here that I want to make a note. I don't like the feet being crossed, but for MMA stability's sake, it makes some sense. The way this really works is it's hard to do it from this position because you're kind of inverted. But the real way to get this is you want to bring your ankle to your rear end as hard as possible. Same on the other inside too. You want to bring those things as hard together as possible. You want to pinch your knees together as much as possible, especially when you're here. When you cross the ankles, that becomes a little bit difficult to do. But it's just a preference thing, especially in MMA where you really have to emphasize security of maintaining the position, right? Versus, I mean, you could argue that if you did it the other way where you're really sort of scrunching down, you don't have to worry about this kind of thing. But I think fighters are worried they're going to get picked up and slammed, and so they want to give themselves just some kind of latching feature at the top. But here you go. Calderwood now is coming to she steps up. So maybe she's going to, oops, let me go back out here. Sorry, I didn't mean to zoom in there. There we go. So maybe she feels like she's going to slam her. I'm not exactly sure what she's going to do, but let's go to follow here and we'll see what happens. So she kind of steps over the head here. All right, she steps over. Let's see with which foot she steps over. This is her left foot. So it's this one. So she kind of steps over and kind of falls over as a consequence because she can't quite stand up. The weight is too far across her face, and even not quite exactly in the back of her neck, but her head is getting pushed off of its center line. Right? Where are you strongest? If you're doing squats, I mean, I bring it back to lifting all the time, but that's when you're lifting heavy weights. If you're doing squats, if you're doing deadlift, you need neutral spine. If your head is cranked off to the side, it's hard to get, right? So it's cranked off, so she tries to step over and she falls over. And this is where you really see what a masterful tactician Cynthia Calvillo is. Look at this position, right? How many times have you seen MMA fighters in this position and it just kind of, they let it go and they just sort of scramble from here? Men or women. You see it all the time. All the time. They go for an armbar, someone tries to stack them, they stand, both kind of fall, they don't really get where they need to go, and then they just kind of let go from there. Not Cynthia. Watch this. This is amazing. First of all, we went over this when the Shevchenko Juliana Pena armbar. She's not looking the wrong way. She's looking the right way. In this kind of scenario, you want to be looking at their hips. That's the direction you want to roll. Because you're going to do this. Watch this leg from Calvillo. She brings it out and around. Why is this important? Because it's a two-way, almost a three-way motion here. This is going to push on the back of her head. It's going to tuck it under. At the same time, she's going to roll under, and then she's going to bring this out and around. She's not going to bring it straight over. It's out and around, and that's going to turn her under. You can't really get someone to turn from here. You're not affecting their structure. But if I can tuck your head, and I can circle mine underneath as well, and I can bring your legs out and around, like, see how she's going to tuck her head here? What do you think's about to happen now? She's destabilizing the structure. That when Calderwood is here, she's got a structure built. So let's take that away. And she's just going to bring her legs around and come up here. And real quickly, let's go back to this one. What is significant about what she's about to do here? She comes up on top, boom. I'm gonna tuck your head underneath. I'm gonna tuck mine. I'm gonna roll your leg over and around me, and I'm gonna come up right on top. And what's important about this? Boom. Now she can't sit up. It's this leg over the face that prevents them from sitting up. Now you cannot sit up. That's what stops it. Okay? Again, ankles crossed. I don't prefer that. I prefer knees pinched. Ankles really squeezed tightly to the ribs. Takes a little practice, but it's a much more secure position. But again, MMA fighters really want to latch onto things, and they feel like they can create a locking mechanism. They're a little bit better. And, of course, she uses that leg to help bring herself up. If you hook this leg when they come over, it's easier for you to sit up with them, right? Because what are you doing? You're attaching yourself to them. So as they roll, it just brings you right up, right? And then look at that. Dead to rights. So she's going to pound on her with hammer fists. Boom. Right there. Now, she kind of lets loose here. I think she hears the donk, donk, donk 10-second clock. So she doesn't do a whole lot. Let's go. And then you can see at this point it's kind of loose and broken. She leans back for it, and there's nothing really there. But my point being is, from this position here, you just see messes in MMA. Calvillo goes quick. Look at this. Pretty damn impressive. Let's take a look quickly at that third round on that back take. Okay, third round. Calderwood is in a southpaw stance. She switches, almost gets square, throws a left kick, sort of to the body or teep. Calvillo kind of catches it, tries to follow up here. She's above the knee, so she's got something, right? Follows it up. Now, normally you would want to be like, this is not textbook, you know, and look, it worked, so who cares? Just saying, if we're just talking, if we're just grading things, it's not exactly textbook. I mean, yes, she's raising it up tight, and she's able to get and hook this leg. But traditionally speaking, you kind of want to be like, you want to have this thigh against your body. You know what I mean? You want to be much closer hip to hip. She's a little bit further away, so there's some work to be done on takedowns, is all I'm pointing out, right? Again, not exactly the next Ronda Rousey, but for the reasons like this, there's some work to be done on this, for sure. All right, but she does hook the leg, and you can see already this is off balance in Calderwood. She sticks her hand out, which is a common reaction. Boom, they go down. All right, just watch this. So here she is, already covering the hips tightly. She lets, you're going to see this, she lets Calderwood roll to her base. Right? Now she's got one person's facing this way, one person's facing this way. So she's got an interesting angle here, and she's going to want to see what Calderwood does. So I think what she's going to do is she's going to bang on here a little bit. Nope, she sinks the inside hook. This is the hook you want first. If you're facing this way, this is the hook that's going to go. You're not going to try and... A lot of people take the back like they're mounting a horse, and that's become a little bit more common in MMA, even among good competitors. But traditionally speaking, it's the inside hook that you want first, which is what she does. Technical, right? And, of course, she's going to start going for a seatbelt grip here. Now, this is the interesting part. She's going to bang on her a little bit here to get her to move, which works. It works quite well, actually. She tries to post a hand and stand. And she's going to try, rather than referee position out, which she can't because now this hook has been preventing her from doing this, she's going to try and just sort of get her shoulders and face to the cage, a la Robert Whittaker on, Yoel Romero from last week, right? So she finally crawls over. But here's what Calvillo does. She's got this hook here. She's going to lift it up. She's going to lift it up, and you can see there's nothing really stopping her here. So that's going to enable her to sink to her own hips, right, and bring her down and roll her off of her base. Because where do you want to go? I'm not going to try and take your back while you've got your base. I'm going to try and take your back when I've snatched you off of your base. This is what I mean about how good she is, right? Boom. Look at that. And you can see she's created a bit of a blocking mechanism and a trip to use that to pull her off. Go back and look at this again, right? You're going to use this hook here, going to raise this up, going to create a sort of a blocking mechanism, and I'm going to just sort of use a seatbelt here. I think she might change her grip with her hands. Nope, she keeps it the same. Oh, no, she does change it. She goes over the neck here, I believe. And just snatches her off of her base. And all she needs to do is get to a knee. And then she's going to pull the weight of Calderwood on top of her. But you don't have anything here. Right? You can see Calderwood, there's nothing controlling the top of the back here. So what's she going to do? She's going to plant this foot, and she's going to shrimp out to her own left. Right? See that? See how she's putting her foot in the air, and she's got her ass in the air? She's going to turn it this way. She's going to do it again. Boom. Now, hips are in alignment with the hips. She can take the other hook. Look how fast that happened. From snatching her off of her base. Here she's trying to get up. We're at 28 seconds. Just watch. 3 seconds. She took your back fully. I'm telling you guys, she is vicious on the mat. So here she has 2 hooks in and double wrist control from the back. I mean, this is just terrible for Calderwood, right? Now, Calderwood probably knows that the end of the round is near, so I don't know if she was too worried about it, but not the strongest defense. Okay, and then eventually she locks in this choke, and you can see it's tight under there. You can see Calderwood grimacing. The hand fighting goes on, as you can see, for about maybe 13, 15 seconds or so, something like that. And she finally locks it up, and this was grabbable, and she does grab it. You can see she's grimacing badly here, and she's getting bowed out as well. But the round ends, and she gets saved. But look at this is my point. Once on the ground, it is like quicksand, man. It is absolutely like quicksand. And she has all these tricks to sag, block, turn, shrimp, back take. It's just, Cynthia Calvillo is incredible, man. So is there work to be done on her striking? No doubt about it. Is there work to be done on her takedowns? Absolutely. But on the mat, I'm telling you, this might be the most exciting female grappler since Ronda Rousey. And last but not least, let's take a look at what's coming up in the week ahead. Boy, there'll be other events, but this is the big one. This is a big, big moment for the career of Chris Weidman, man. It is I won't say do or die moment, but it's pretty close. UFC on Fox 25. This takes place on Saturday, July 22nd at the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Uniondale. That's, of course, Long Island, New York. In the main event, Chris Weidman takes on Kelvin Gastelum. Dennis Bermudez faced Darren Elkins. Patrick Cummins returns to action against John Vellante. So does Jimmy Rivera against Thomas Almeida. That's your main card on Fox. Your prelim card on Fox. Lyman Good comes back from suspension against Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. Rafael Natal versus Eric Anders. Ryan LaFleur versus Cowboy Alex Oliveira. That should be a fun one. Damian Grabowski versus Chase Sherman. And then on UFC Fight Pass, Kyle Bochniak versus Jeremy Kennedy. Brian Boom Kelleher takes on Marlon Vera. Timothy Johnson versus Junior Albini. Shane Burgos is going to fight Godofredo Pepe. And then Chris Wade versus Frankie Perez. If you have any questions, if I missed anything, oh, by the way, Buchecha versus Hodrick Gracie rematch is also this weekend. Looking forward to that as well. The first time it was a draw, although Buchecha should have won on points if it was a Metamorph, so what do you want to say about it? But that should be fun as well. And by the way, I put in the comments, or I put in the description below, that nasty loop choke from Alexandre Vieira at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, I believe, in Tokyo. So check that out. I believe that's what it was. Yes, it was the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Grand Slam. Grand Prix is different. The Grand Slam. Okay. Email me, LukeThomasNews@gmail.com if I missed anything. Of course, I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram.com/LukeThomasNews. Facebook.com/LukeThomasNews. Give me a like and a follow. It's always appreciated. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe to MMA Fighting below. And until next time, enjoy the fights.